Exposed, the shocking transformation my daughter-in-law unveiled during my 30-day business trip. Ellen's hands trembled on the steering wheel as she drove towards the airport, her heart racing between fear and anticipation. Could she really entrust the family business to Jessica? The moment she had dreaded for weeks was finally here. It isn't that I don't believe in her, Ellen muttered under her breath, grappling with the weight of her conflicting emotions. But does she believe in herself? Jessica was ambitious, but in a family ruled by shadows of tradition, she had always been a trailing star. Ellen cast one last glance at Maplewood, the quaint town she had lovingly nurtured with her husband. The closer she got to the airport, the heavier the weight on her chest became. Would Jessica sink or swim when faced with the competition's ruthless tactics? Ellen had built the business on community ties and trust, and the thought of leaving it in someone else's hands clawed at her. There was something quite raw about this moment, a deep sense of inadequacy that bubbled beneath the surface. She had spent decades supporting everyone but herself, and now she was leaving her legacy to someone who had spent half that time trying to prove her worth. Sitting in the airport terminal, Ellen's mind swirled with competing fears and mounting doubts. Should I have prepared her more? She questioned herself as the boarding announcement broke through her reverie. But deep down, there lingered that bitter whisper of jealousy. What if she flourished without me? Was this a revelation or a betrayal? Thoughts spun like a cyclone, tearing at her sense of identity. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The plane lifted off, a jolt of adrenaline shooting through her. Boosted by altitude, she stared out at the clouds below, her heart heavy with deep disquiet. What if Jessica fails? The thought spiraled back into her mind, quickly followed by an uneasy counterpoint. What if she succeeded? Ellen envisioned an office bustling with energy, the outdated decor giving way to bright new ideas. Each small victory might feed into the larger perception of her as the heroine of this narrative, a narrative Ellen had written, starring herself. Returning to a changed Maplewood was growing into a daunting prospect. Ellen's unease rippled through her chest as she imagined stepping back into the agency, facing a daughter-in-law who had blossomed into a force to be reckoned with. Would Ellen still matter? Would she know her place? As she flipped through a magazine to distract herself from doubt, each flipping page mirrored her racing thoughts, timid, fearful, and overwhelmed yet still desperately proud. The looming uncertainty twisted inside, squeezing tighter with every passing minute. Ellen could feel the heat rising in her face and the pressure mounting in her head. Would she embrace the new Jessica, or reserve the right to remain the matriarch of the family business? The internal conflict simmered, bubbling away, waiting for the inevitable confrontation on her return. Would she find herself in the wake of Jessica's triumph, or would she be left behind, a relic of the past amidst a bright new future? Ellen stepped off the plane and into the bustling airport, the cacophony of voices blending into a distant hum as her thoughts turned inward. The anticipation of home intertwined with fear, and the tightness in her chest surged stronger than ever. She had spent the flight grappling with her identity, torn between pride for Jessica's newfound ambition and anxiety about her own fading relevance. As she rode in the taxi towards Maplewood, each passing landmark signaled a chapter of her life tethered to the business she had built. Familiarity felt foreign now, and the once comfortable landscape had morphed into a stark reminder of change. What if I don't recognize my own legacy? She wondered, the unsettling thought washing over her like a cold wave. Ellen glanced out the window, her expression frozen in reflection. By the time the vehicle pulled up in front of the agency, Ellen's heart was thumping, echoing like a distant drumbeat. The sight of the building stirred a tangled skein of memories, each representing her hard work, sacrifices, and the obstacles she had surmounted. But it also bore witness to everything that had yet to unfold, from Jessica's initial struggles to her escalating responsibility. Would they both fit into a shared narrative, or had time rewritten their roles? With each step into the agency, Ellen was acutely aware of her surroundings, the updated decor, the vibrant energy bouncing off the walls, the laughter of employees at stations that once felt stagnant under her reign. She was greeted with smiles by familiar faces, their warmth both comforting and disorienting. Yet, Ellen's eyes sought out Jessica. Would she be embraced as a mentor, or was she now just a bystander, an extension of the past? "Mom. You're back." Jessica's voice rang out, an infusion of excitement cutting through the murmur. Ellen's heart fluttered at the sight of her daughter-in-law, yet she felt the urge to recoil, the flash of pride dimmed by something deeper. The confidence radiating from Jessica was undeniable, but how could Ellen navigate her feelings of inadequacy when her accomplishments were now overshadowed? "Jessica, it's so good to see you," she replied, forcing a smile. But what awaited her was an unexpected embrace punctuated by unabashed enthusiasm. Ellen leaned into it but felt the paradox between joy and trepidation tear at her. "You won't believe the things we've accomplished while you were away," Jessica exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with ambition. "We secured new clients, expanded our outreach online, and I even managed to revamp our branding." Each piece of news reverberated through Ellen, igniting a flicker of pride while simultaneously igniting fear. Jessica was no longer the novice. She had stepped into a role that Ellen had spent years cultivating, a role that was intrinsically tied to Ellen's identity. "What about my ideas?" Ellen's internal voice echoed, threatening to spiral into counterproductive thoughts. "Will they even be relevant anymore?" Ellen took a deep breath, attempting to regain control. The pressing challenge lay ahead, a confrontation not with Jessica, but within herself. Could she adapt? The question loomed large, necessary yet frightening, demanding a willingness to discover an evolving self amidst the shifting dynamics of her business and family. As she peered around the modern office, Ellen resolved to dive into this new chapter with a heart willing to embrace transformation, but unease lingered. Would her experiences from the past hold value in this revitalized space? And so, the moment of truth hovered just beyond her reach, waiting to unfurl its secrets. With resolve gathering within her, the question emerged more pressing than ever: who was Ellen now, in a world that may no longer have room for the wisdom of age? The moment of reckoning approached, and clarity hung just out of sight. Ellen stepped further into the office, her resolve countered by a sense of dislocation. Each lively interaction among the team members felt like a reminder of her erstwhile dominance, now overshadowed by Jessica's vibrant direction. The modernized workspace with its open-plan layout, colorful artwork, and collaborative zones demanded adaptation, and it became clear that clinging to her former methodology would lead to isolation, both personally and professionally. As she took a seat at her old desk, now only sporadically marked with the remnants of her touch, Ellen turned her focus inward, grappling with the unease that buzzed within her. The headlines she had envisioned for her own return turned into introspection about her legacy. What good were the strategies she had laid and executed if they were now outdated? She felt like a relic amidst a revival. Would her attempts to assert authority feel desperate or empowered? Confrontation awaited, not just with Jessica but with the fear that had taken root in her spirit. Before she could ruminate too deeply, Jessica rejoined her, her presence electrifying the air. "Ellen, we need to go over the upcoming presentation. You'll want to help, right?" she asked, enthusiasm spilling forth. "Yes, let's do that," Ellen replied, though inside she wrestled with uncertainty. As they moved to a glass meeting room adorned with motivational quotes, Ellen caught a glimpse of her reflection, a woman battling feelings of insignificance. But she recognized a flicker of resistance rising within her, a refusal to surrender to this discomfort. By the time she sat across from Jessica, poised to delve into business, Ellen was conscious of the weight of her knowledge. Instead of retreating into silence, she began sharing insights, framing them as questions to incite discussion. "What part do you think will resonate most with our new clientele? Have we considered their evolving needs?" Each query was deliberately crafted to import her experience rather than derail Jessica's vision. Jessica leaned forward, her brows knitting in concentration. "I believe we have a big opportunity with the digital initiatives, but I welcome your thoughts on how we can integrate traditional outreach more effectively." Ellen's heart raced, a glimmer of unexpected validation coursing through her. This interplay did more than just establish her relevance, it forged a partnership, inviting collaboration rather than asserting dominance. As they delved deeper into their strategy, Ellen felt a shift within herself. No longer just a custodian of her previous accomplishments, she began to see opportunities to augment Jessica's vision with her seasoned understanding. Collaborating sparked a feeling she thought was long lost, one of prompt adaptability, persistence, and co-creation. Could her legacy morph instead of fade? After a robust discussion that spanned hours, it was Jessica who turned the tables. "You know, we should adjust the team goals to incorporate mentorship opportunities. You have so much to offer, especially at crucial junctures." The word struck Ellen with the force of revelation. Did Jessica not view her as a remnant of the past? Could she actually play a critical role moving forward? Ellen's doubt transformed into determination. The fear of extinction she had faced was now morphing into an invitation to innovate, to utilize her unique expertise as a contributor to progress rather than a competitor to her own protégé. Ellen drove home that evening, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. She had ignited a fire within, one fueled by clarity and purpose, eager to embrace this new phase of her life. And maybe, she thought, my wisdom is not obsolete, but a bridge to new heights. That night, she penned a list of ideas, initiating a blueprint for cooperation, one that could redefine her professional existence. As the ink dried, Ellen felt the weight of anticipation hanging in the air, compelling in its potential. But silence fell over her newly illuminated resolve. What ripple effects could her return create within the agency, and how far-reaching would her influence truly become? The vast unknown loomed ahead, leaving Ellen brimming with both hope and uncertainty. Would she truly find her place again, or would the adjustments prove more formidable than she ever anticipated? The morning sun streamed through the office windows, bathing the space in a warm glow, yet Ellen felt a chill within herself. She remembered the enthusiasm she had once possessed, a force field of ambition that seemed all but diminished. Today, however, there was a flicker of resolve pushing her to look beyond mere survival in this new landscape. With a renewed focus, Ellen combed through her list of ideas from last night. Each scribbled line represented not just her knowledge, but also a shift in her mindset, a transformation that meant blending her experience with the fresh perspectives Jessica brought. While the old Ellen might have hesitated to share insights for fear of being overshadowed, the new Ellen was determined to assert her place as a guiding ally instead of an oppressive overseer. As she entered the office, the vibrant hum around her felt different. Colleagues greeted her not with whispers of past glories but with genuine nods of acknowledgement. She approached Jessica's desk, locking eyes with her protégé. "I think we should strategize a mentorship program, as you suggested. Imagine the outcomes if we combine classic methodologies with innovative practices." Jessica's eyes sparkled with excitement. "That's exactly what I was hoping we could explore. Why don't we arrange a brainstorming session with the team?" Ellen agreed, a sense of purpose swelling within her. As they gathered the team, Ellen positioned herself less as a facilitator and more as an architect of dialogue. She opened the floor, encouraging ideas and fostering an atmosphere of sharing, one that she sensed had been stifled in her previous regime. The room filled with a collective energy as voices chimed in with zeal, constructing a patchwork of strategies and insights. Each comment, however simple, echoed through Ellen's mind, a reminder that adaptability was the cornerstone of her current mission. A realization struck her: leadership was no longer just about imposing direction, it was about nurturing a culture of innovation. She leaned into that truth, asking questions that encouraged critical thinking and inspired creativity. How can we make our outreach more meaningful in today's context? What skills can each of us contribute to the mentorship initiative? With each exchange, Ellen felt her confidence swell, and for the first time in a long while, she stepped away from her insecurities. A subtle but empowering shift took root. She was no longer competing with Jessica. Instead, she was complementing her. During lunch, Ellen and Jessica reflected on their morning. The discussion circled back to Ellen's earlier struggles with inferiority. "I've been wrestling with the idea that I might be obsolete," Ellen confessed, vulnerability weaving through her words. Jessica tilted her head, her expression thoughtful. "Ellen, you're not obsolete, your experience is invaluable. But it's about how you choose to position yourself moving forward. It's not about scaling back, it's about scaling wisely." As they spoke, Ellen felt clarity surfacing. Her desire to contribute wasn't tied to reclaiming lost authority, it was about crafting a legacy of mentorship that would empower the next generation. That thought became a beacon, guiding her as they laid the groundwork for their mentorship program. When the day wound down, Ellen returned home, a mix of exhilaration and exhaustion washing over her. She realized she was carving a new niche, one that combined her depth of experience with the fresh vigor of those around her. But as she settled into reflection, a nagging question loomed. Was this collaboration merely a temporary measure? Would her ability to mentor be authentic if she wasn't genuinely in her own skin? The tension built within her as she prepared for the day ahead. She understood that the uncomfortable metamorphosis she endured was a fundamental part of her evolution. The office buzzed with promise, yet a part of her wondered about the limits of this transformation. Would she have the strength to navigate every twist this journey offered, or would there be moments where she stumbled under the weight of expectation? The following morning, Ellen made a decision. She'd confront the very assumptions that threatened her newfound footing. With clarity blossoming, she penned an agenda for her mentoring initiative, her heart thrumming in anticipation. She was about to take a significant leap, one that would take her deeper into the complexities of leadership and self-discovery. But the question niggled at her mind: how would she respond when the reflection staring back revealed parts of her she still feared to confront? Ellen awoke with a sense of urgency, the remnants of doubt lingering in the periphery of her mind. Today was pivotal, not just for her, but for the mentorship program that had become the manifestation of her rebirth. The agenda she crafted the night before lay before her, a bold declaration of intention. Yet, as she stared at it, uncertainty constricted her stomach. What if the ideas fell flat? What if the team dismissed her proposals? Steeling herself, she reminded herself that leadership demanded courage. Today, she would not waver. She arrived at the office early, greeted by an unusually quiet space, mirroring her own internal tension. The silence amplified her thoughts as she reviewed her notes. Without the familiar backdrop of her past achievements, she felt raw and exposed. When Jessica arrived, Ellen felt a spark of reassurance. "Good morning. Are you ready for today?" Jessica's enthusiasm washed over Ellen, momentarily dispelling her apprehensions. Together, they set up the conference room for the brainstorming session, Ellen taking care to arrange the space to encourage an open dialogue. At the scheduled time, team members trickled in, the atmosphere already buzzing with curiosity and the spirit of collaboration that Ellen hoped to nurture. Ellen initiated the session, her voice steady as she outlined the objectives, her passion igniting the attention of those present. Yet, as she began to share her vision for the mentorship program, a pause wrapped itself around her. The quiet space left room for self-doubt to creep in. "Are we sure this is the right approach?" she asked herself. She glanced briefly at Jessica, whose reassuring smile reminded her of the collective belief they were attempting to foster. Ellen pressed onward, laying out her ideas clearly, inviting feedback and thoughts, even opening herself to critique. Her vulnerability surprised her. She had opened herself up to the risk of failure in front of her peers. As colleagues chimed in with their thoughts, Ellen felt her pulse quicken. Each suggestion reinforced the notion that her vision wasn't merely a solitary endeavor, it was a team mission. Yet, lurking beneath the energetic back and forth, Ellen's mind circled back to Jessica. What if Jessica shone too brightly? Would Ellen find herself lost in the shadows again? "Ellen, how do you see this mentorship addressing some of the specific skill gaps we have?" one team member probed, pulling her from her reverie. Ellen hesitated, feeling a pulse of resistance rising within as her instinct to retreat flickered. Taking a deep breath, she acknowledged that grit was necessary not just in the strategies she shared but in demonstrating her own authority and expertise. "I believe that we have unique perspectives to offer," she said, the weight of her words grounding her. "This initiative isn't about one person leading the charge, it's about each of us contributing our strengths. I see Jessica's recent success in digital outreach as a case study. Let us learn from that." The room lit up as ideas flowed freely, the dynamic evolving into one of synergy, the authenticity of their discussion releasing the weight Ellen carried. As discussions deepened, Ellen found herself navigating through uncharted waters, forcing herself to engage, question, and connect. The excitement in the room ignited her spirit, and momentarily, any fear of exposure shrank beneath the shared purpose orbiting them. Yet, in the back of her mind lingered a shadow. Was this authenticity simply an illusion? Hours slipped by as Ellen embraced the role of facilitator, orchestrating a dance of dreams and strategies that felt invigorating. The fear of being overshadowed by Jessica began to dissolve. She could see her protégé not as a competitor, but as crucial support in this newfound mission. Yet as the session wrapped, a sinking thought gnawed at her. Would her revelation be enough to protect her identity as a leader moving forward? When the final reflection on the session concluded, Ellen's heart raced with satisfaction, but an unsettling feeling settled inside her. Things were changing, sure, yet she couldn't ignore the intricate dance of past and present threatening to unravel her progress. Walking to her desk, she stopped, staring at her reflection in the glass. Who was she, really, beneath these layers of titles and roles? What would happen when she would be forced to confront the fragments of her past that lingered unchallenged? Tomorrow would demand answers, and as Ellen prepared to leave for the day, the question loomed: how far could she really go in embracing this new self? She didn't have the answers yet, sensing that tomorrow's challenges might push her further than she anticipated. Ellen sat at her desk, the remnants of the brainstorming session whirling in her mind like leaves caught in a whirlwind. The thrill of collaboration was buoyant, yet the undercurrent of self-doubt pulled at her like an anchor. This role, this chance to lead, felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Could she balance the responsibilities of leadership with the lingering shadows of her insecurity? As she packed her belongings to leave for the day, the weight of the unknown loomed larger. What awaited her in the days to come? Decisions would need to be made, and each choice had the potential to shape her trajectory. With a resolve forming quietly in her chest, Ellen decided she would confront her doubts head-on. The following morning, Ellen woke with determination. Stepping into the office, she noticed a vibrant energy coursing through the hallway, a stark contrast to her previous anxiety. Colleagues greeted each other warmly, laughter bubbled in the air, and Ellen took this as a sign. Perhaps her vision for the mentorship program was resonating more than she realized. However, the moment she found herself in her office, alone with her thoughts, doubt whispered once more. What if you can't maintain this momentum? It sneered. What if the team expects too much from you? Ellen took a deep breath. It was time to embrace a fierce new mantra: expect greatness, but accept growth. She turned on her computer, readying a message to her team, inviting them to share personal experiences they believed had shaped their careers. Transparency, she felt, was vital, not just the open dialogue from the previous session, but an intimate look at the journeys each of them had taken. As she typed, she envisioned the potential for deeper connections among her team. This could be where they truly learned from each other. The responses flooded in a cascade of vulnerabilities laced with triumph. Reading through them, Ellen discovered stories that mirrored her own struggles and victories. Her teammates had faced imposter syndrome too, fought their own battles against self-doubt, and emerged on the other side. It was a collective overcoming, yet each journey was also uniquely individual. Inspired, Ellen resolved to weave these narratives into the mentorship program. It could evolve from a rigid framework into a robust sanctuary for personal growth. As she envisioned how to incorporate these stories into their sessions, an unexpected realization struck her. The depth of her past wasn't something to hide, it was a wellspring of strength. It set her apart as a leader willing to be vulnerable. That afternoon, she invited Jessica into her office, intent on sharing her newfound vision. I want the mentorship program to include more of our personal journeys, Ellen explained. Jessica's eyes widened in understanding. That's powerful, she said, her enthusiasm palpable. It makes it real, the struggles, the wins. I think it'll resonate with everyone. The exchange sparked an infectious energy between them, reinforcing Ellen's conviction. She wasn't just leading an initiative, she was building community. Yet, as Ellen basked in the momentum of the day, the lurking shadow of her past re-emerged. How would she handle the naysayers, the ones who might find cracks in her new persona? What if they dismissed her efforts as mere attempts to cope with insecurity? The weight of that uncertainty pressed heavily on her chest. She wasn't just steering a mentorship program, she was peeling back layers of self-preservation, opening herself up for potential scrutiny. As she left the office that day, Ellen's resolve wavered. She wanted to embrace her vulnerability as strength, but the fear of judgment loomed large. Could she truly navigate this shift without unraveling before the watchful eyes of her peers? The drive home felt torturous, a maelstrom of excitement and fear raging in her heart. Tomorrow promised more than just strategies and brainstorming. It beckoned confrontation with the reality of her identity. Ellen gripped the steering wheel tighter, knowing the stakes were rising. Would she step into her truth, or would she fold under the pressure? As she pulled into her driveway, the clock struck 6, but the questions echoed louder than ever. What was she willing to lose to gain herself? The answer remained elusive, yet vibrant possibilities sparked in her mind. Ellen could almost taste the change on the horizon, a daunting yet thrilling path laid out before her. She shifted her focus. It was time to prepare for tomorrow's encounter with herself. Would she emerge stronger, or would she retreat once again into doubt? Ellen awoke the next day with a sense of urgency pulsing through her veins. This was not merely another day at the office, it was an opportunity to redefine herself, to reshape the very foundation of her leadership style. She looked in the mirror, contemplating the reflection staring back at her, a blend of determination and doubt. Today, the carefully curated facade would be stripped away. It was time to reveal her authentic self. Arriving at the office, the atmosphere seemed different. Her colleagues were already bustling around, diving into their daily tasks, yet Ellen felt more like an outsider stepping onto a stage. Unable to shake the nervous energy swirling inside her, she made a mental note to focus on her strengths. Instead of shrinking into the shadows, she would radiate the lessons learned from her team's shared experiences. As she stepped into the conference room, Ellen's heart raced. Flashbacks of her fraught moments with self-doubt surged, but she quelled them with a strong breath. Sitting before her were the very people she sought to inspire, and she knew she had to lead by example. Her voice trembled slightly as she began. I want to thank all of you for your honest contributions to the mentorship program discussions. Today, I'd like to share my journey and the struggles I've faced in my own career. The room went silent. She watched as her colleagues leaned in, intrigued by the vulnerability she was displaying. Ellen dove deep into personal anecdotes, including battles against feelings of unworthiness and moments when she questioned her capability. She spoke of nights spent in tears over deadlines and the relentless chase of perfectionism. With each word, she felt walls crumbling, not just in her mind but around the room. It created a distinct bond that hadn't existed before. As she navigated through her narrative, Ellen caught glimpses of nodding heads and empathetic eyes meeting hers. When she concluded, she felt a surprising lightness in her spirit. It was as if she had liberated not just herself, but them as well. Thank you for sharing, Ellen, Jessica said thoughtfully. Your openness reaffirms that we're not alone in this. Others joined in with stories of their own, further fostering a heartfelt dialogue. Encouraged by their rising energy, Ellen began to formulate actionable steps for the mentorship program, strategies that faced challenges head-on, built on resilience and mutual understanding. However, when the meeting adjourned, unease crept in again. Ellen was acutely aware that while many had shared their vulnerabilities, others remained quiet, stowed away behind layers of armor. She pondered silently, were there naysayers in their midst? Who might still doubt her initiative, dismissing it as mere emotional outpouring? Their skepticism nagged at her like a ghost, lurking just outside her vision. With the weight of potential judgment resting heavy on her chest, Ellen realized that her path forward required more than openness. It needed defensiveness against the doubts of others. In order to be a stalwart leader, she had to build her confidence on a solid foundation, fortified not only by the support of her community but also by her self-belief. Later that evening, while reflecting on the day's events, Ellen faced a revelation. She needed strategies to combat her internal and external critics. What tools could she develop to reinforce her confidence? A workbook, perhaps, designed for self-assessment and goal-setting? A set of affirmations derived from her own experiences? These ideas thrummed to life in her mind as she jotted them down. Focused and energized, Ellen leaned back in her chair, eyes scanning the notes before her, as a new resolve began to congeal within. The next step was clear. She would develop a series of workshops that not only engaged the team in personal growth, but also plugged the gaps for those who might have remained silent. This wouldn't be a one-sided dialogue, it would be a call to action. As she drifted off to sleep that night, a subtle thrill coursed through her. Tomorrow would hold more courage-testing moments, and she needed to be prepared for the next confrontations to come. The question lingered in her mind, How could she turn doubts into discussions that propelled both her and her team forward? Ellen anticipated the challenges that awaited this time, armed with a renewed sense of purpose. But just as excitement surged, another unsettling thought crossed her mind. What if her initiatives sparked unexpected backlash? Would her colleagues embrace this deeper exploration of their identities, or would they recoil, thrusting her back into uncertainty? As she wrestled with these possibilities, Ellen felt the stakes of her newfound growth escalate, her heart pounding as she faced the thrilling unknown. Tomorrow, she would have to not only confront herself but confront them. Ellen awoke the next morning with a sense of exhilaration overshadowed by the weight of anticipation. Today, she was to present her first workshop based on the insights gleaned from the conference room discussions. The night had been restless, her mind racing through various scenarios, the impact of her ideas, the reception from her colleagues, and the potential backlash that haunted her thoughts. As she prepared for work, she glanced over her notes one last time, reinforcing her strategies for engaging quiet voices in the room. This was not just a professional responsibility, it was a test of her commitment to embody the vulnerability she had spoken about. She was determined to make every participant feel seen and heard, yet a flicker of doubt crept in. Would they view this workshop as mere fluff? Or would it resonate deeply, sowing the seeds of actual transformation? Upon arrival, the atmosphere felt charged, her heart quickened. Colleagues gathered around, unsure of how to engage with the new setup of the room. Ellen smiled, trying to mask her nerves, and greeted them warmly. Welcome, everyone. Today, we'll be stepping into some uncharted territory together. She gestured toward the whiteboard filled with her outline. This isn't just about learning, it's about the commitment we make to each other. As the workshop kicked off, Ellen presented her first activity, a self-assessment worksheet designed to provoke introspection. She felt the initial hesitation in the room. Some colleagues filled out the sheets quietly, while others crossed their arms defensively. She sensed their reluctance to peel back the layers of self-protection they had donned for so long. Remember, she encouraged, vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, it's actually a bridge to deeper connections. Yet, even as she spoke, a nagging doubt tugged at her. Were her words landing where they needed to? Would they backfire and leave her exposed to criticism? Would her own journey of vulnerability turn into a moment of ridicule? The atmosphere shifted as she included an open dialogue, and to her surprise, small nuggets of courage began surfacing. One by one, colleagues started sharing snippets of their own challenges and victories, stories that echoed Ellen's own reverberated in the room. Laughter pierced through moments of solemnity, interconnectedness blossomed, yet one voice was louder in its absence: Tom, the team's top performer known for his skeptical demeanor. Ellen's stomach knotted as she realized this could easily turn into a confrontational arena. The more participants spoke, the more she braced for an inevitable challenge from Tom. Her heart pounded louder, anticipating the backlash she had feared. Just as she began to gain momentum, he raised his hand. What are we really getting from all of this, Ellen? Tom interjected, a guarded expression shadowing his face. Murmurs rippled through the room, eyes darting between them. Ellen's breath caught. This was her moment to confront her own fears and stand firm. Great question, Tom. What I hope to foster here is a culture where we can discuss our realities honestly. That requires bravery from each of us, including you. It's easy to hide behind performance and metrics. Her voice steadied with determination, and she noticed the subtle shift in atmosphere. She was no longer solely on the defense, she felt empowered enough to lead the charge. Tom seemed taken aback, but the tension was palpable. The room divided into supporters and skeptics, with Tom at the helm of resistance. Ellen realized this was more than just managing a workshop, it was about instilling a philosophical shift in a culture of silence. Would she be able to draw him into a collaborative conversation instead of a combative one? In that moment, Ellen recognized her role wasn't merely to suit the skeptics but to challenge them, to bring them along on this journey. She pondered, how could she breach that divide without alienating him or others who might follow suit in disagreement? How would she harness the strength of collective experience without losing her footing in the face of dissent? That inner conflict surged within her. As she moved into a deeper exploration of the workshop materials, she caught the glance of another participant who nodded in agreement with her stance. This was only the beginning. Ellen could feel the tide changing. She needed to lean into this moment. But how? Determined to create a constructive dialogue, she took a step forward, ready to tackle the unforeseen confrontation head-on and convert doubt into cohesive strength. The stakes felt higher, and a tantalizing thrill coursed through her veins. Tomorrow would be an evolution, a moment where defense transformed into engagement and assurance, and yet, as the discussion crescendoed, another unsettling possibility flickered through her mind. What if her strategies sparked an uprising rather than a unity? Would she be able to maintain this balance, or would the very foundation she sought to build crumble under the voices of dissent? Ellen steeled herself for what lay ahead, ready to engage the conflict that would define not only herself but her team's cultural evolution. Ellen felt as though the weight of the room was bearing down on her as the dialogue swirled around the central issue of performance versus vulnerability. She maintained her composure, but inside, a whirlwind of thoughts collided. Could she withstand this scrutiny? This was her chance to reshape not just the workshop, but her entire approach to leadership. Tom remained silent for a moment, his brow furrowed, contemplating her response. Ellen took a breath, urging herself to let the silence linger. It felt as if time stretched on, amplifying her uncertainty. Then, randomness struck, as Natalie, one of the quieter team members, made an unexpected comment. I've always felt my ideas were never good enough compared to those who speak up more. Maybe it's time we acknowledge that and change how we engage in discussions. The ripple of agreement that followed seemed to bolster Ellen's resolve. She turned to Tom, who had become the focal point of resistance. I understand the skepticism, Tom. It's easy to dismiss these ideas when metrics have always been our guiding stars. But what if we just experimented with this openness? What do we have to lose if we try to connect more deeply? Tom's expression remained guarded, yet the nodding heads around them provided Ellen the momentum to press forward. She could sense a strategy forming as each contribution added layers of consideration. Perhaps we could structure future meetings in a way that highlights individual contributions, creating a more balanced platform where everyone feels their voice matters. What do you think, Tom? The room hung in anticipation. Did she just challenge the top performer? A swift glance around showed a mix of hope and anxiety reflected on the faces she was leading. Would they band together in support, or would Tom alienate her for the daring approach? Engagements like this don't guarantee results, Ellen, Tom finally replied, a hint of irritation creeping into his tone. You can't measure sincerity, and I question how this will drive performance metrics, which is what this team is based on. Her heart raced, yet instead of flinching, she leaned in. I'm not dismissing performance, I'm advocating for engagement as a necessitated layer beneath it. If we're only talking numbers without substance, we're missing the point. Great teams are built on trust, and trust is built through vulnerability. Performance will follow when people collaborate sincerely. Tom looked momentarily taken aback, perhaps contemplating the weight of her words and their implications. Ellen sensed the crowd's energy shift, some nodded, others were engaged in whispered deliberations. This wasn't just a workshop anymore, it was a full-blown discourse on the culture they had cultivated. For the first time, she sensed that she was not only challenging Tom's views but effectively questioning an ingrained mindset that could ultimately transcend their working culture. As the workshop progressed, Ellen witnessed more involvement and engagement than she had ever anticipated. Voices mixed freely, a beautiful cacophony of ideas and perspectives. The earlier walls began to dissolve, and Ellen savored each genuine exchange, feeling her confidence grow. Unbeknownst to her, Tom observed the evolution unfolding before him, his brow unwrinkling slightly as he began to see societal structures he had clung to start to shift. Somewhere between her resolute disbelief and evolving dialogue, a small epiphany emerged. It was unfolding, she was learning, and deeply so. With each question they tackled together, her sense of purpose crystallized. She was no longer merely an educator in this space. She was an architect of transformation. As the workshop concluded, Ellen felt a profound sense of accomplishment wash over her. Before she could let herself bask in it too long, Tom stood up and proclaimed, "You've started something, Ellen, a disruption in our norm, and I'm intrigued. But what's the next step?" Ellen's heart raced, the tide was turning in ways she hadn't imagined. She would have to consider how to maintain this momentum and address those who remained hesitant. As she looked around the room, invigorated, she realized this was only a glimpse of the undertaking ahead. The conversation that needed to happen had just begun. How would she harness this burgeoning energy to ensure it didn't dissipate, but rather transformed into lasting change? Furthermore, could she help Tom, with his rigid viewpoints, pivot into a collaborative force? The next chapter loomed ahead, one filled with complications and revelations that lay in wait. As days turned into weeks, Ellen became a fervent architect of change within the agency, an unexpected champion of collaboration. Her mentorship program evolved into a cornerstone of Maplewood's culture, sewing threads of vulnerability and connection among her team members. Each workshop brought tangible results, underscoring Ellen's belief that personal stories foster collective strength. The once distant hum of apprehension around Tom transformed into a palpable engagement. He became an ally in the pursuit of deeper discourse, recognizing that vulnerability was not a weakness but a source of empowerment. Ellen, once consumed by fear of obscurity, began forging her path forward with newfound confidence, reveling in her role as an integral part of a collaborative environment rather than a solitary leader commanding respect. During a reflective session, Tom stood up and shared how Ellen's approach ignited a shift not only in the team dynamics but within himself. The shift was tangible, a marked departure from his earlier skepticism. "Ellen, I have to admit I didn't see the value in vulnerability before now. But you've shown me that our strengths lie in embracing our shared journeys," he said, his voice steady but vulnerable. This recognition brought warmth to Ellen. Here was validation she had long sought. Feeling the pressure of expectations ease, Ellen realized she had successfully navigated the convoluted emotions tied to her legacy and her transformation into a mentor. What began as an intimidating leap into discomfort morphed into a fulfilling pursuit of growth, both hers and her team's. Empowered by her achievements, Ellen proposed introducing personal development as a core component of employee evaluations and incentives. Rather than focusing solely on traditional metrics, she aimed to enrich the team's culture of connection while honoring the pressures of performance. She collaborated with HR to implement these strategies, a decision reflecting not only her growth but also an acute awareness of the importance of intertwining personal fulfillment with professional excellence. As she observed her colleagues diving into honest conversations about their ambitions and insecurities, Ellen felt the indefatigable spirit of courage reverberating through the office. Individuals now offered insights, ideas flourished, and one pivotal outcome emerged: employee retention rates nearly doubled. Recognition from the industry followed swiftly, with Maplewood receiving awards for its innovative approach to employee engagement. Personal success soon shadowed the collective achievements. Ellen was invited to speak at a leadership conference on fostering cultures of vulnerability, a significant honor validating her efforts. Determined to convey her journey authentically, she integrated her initial struggles into her narrative, unearthing the deeper part of herself that had long been overshadowed by fear and tradition. The day of the conference arrived, and Ellen stood on stage, the spotlight illuminating her newfound confidence. She spoke passionately about her transformation from merely a leader to a catalyst for collective growth. As she shared her fears and triumphs, the audience resonated with her words, demonstrating a collective understanding of the challenges they faced in their own careers. At that moment, Ellen felt she had not just conquered her initial fears, she had successfully redefined her identity, establishing herself as a forward-thinking leader adept at fostering meaningful connections. The applause that erupted at her concluding remark was a resounding acknowledgement of her journey, a culmination of months spent embracing vulnerability alongside her team. Returning to the agency, Ellen peripherally acknowledged the bustling energy, which now buzzed with camaraderie. Where she once felt like a relic, she now stood at the forefront of a vibrant future. Her fears of redundancy dissipated. She realized the depth of her knowledge was now interspersed with the innovative energy surrounding her. Ellen's transformation was complete. No longer defined by the shadows of her past, she had emerged more than a matriarch. She became a mentor, an innovator, and a source of inspiration for those who wished to navigate the evolving landscape of business with integrity and authenticity. Ellen's journey could serve as a call to others, an invitation to confront their fears and embrace their truth. Now, if you resonated with Ellen's story of transformation, you need to subscribe now to the channel. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these inspiring narratives alive. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Comment with your reactions and theories about the ending. Join us on this journey of personal growth.